Hello everyone, my name is Daltin Silva and I'm a football player and a wrestler at Livermore High School. Before I start my speech, I would like to thank Livermore Granada Boosters for selecting and considering me for this scholarship. I'm truly honored to be here with my other fellow student athletes and I'm grateful for this amazing opportunity. I would also like to thank my parents, teachers, and coaches for they have molded me into the person that is here before you today. I started playing tackle football through LJFL in the 4th grade and have been absolutely in love with the sport ever since. The sport has allowed me to make so many friends that I still have today, and I'm very thankful for that. Towards the end of my 8th grade year, LHS began to hold unofficial spring workouts for 8th grade students to come and lift in the weight room. A bunch of my teammates and I spent the next month in the weight room, and I started to see some real results. Freshman year came around, and it was nothing short of fulfilling. I was the captain of our team, and we finished the season with a record of 8-1, beating every other team in E-ball. Unfortunately, the transition into sophomore year did not go quite as planned. My sophomore season was delayed for months on end because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We didn't know for months if we were going to have a season at all until January when we were finally approved for a 5-game season. It was slightly discouraging to know that I wouldn't be getting a full season over something that I was completely out of my control. The discouragement shortly faded away as we sprinted through our 5-game schedule going undefeated. The hype was huge for my junior year, as my teammates and I had found so much success so far, and the senior class above us was also very good. The speed of the game when moving from JV to varsity multiplies by 100. I wasn't a starter at first my junior year, but I saw some playing time on special teams. Towards the end of the year, I got to start due to an unfortunate injury to the starter at my position. I started our last 3 games of the season, one of them being in the NCS playoffs. The season was a bit of a letdown, finishing 6-5 and losing a couple games I definitely knew we should have won. Moving forward, I was ready to work harder than ever to make my senior year one that I would never forget. I spent the whole summer in the gym, putting on a good 10 to 15 pounds of muscle. The team had grown closer than ever as we spent the entire summer grinding together towards a common goal of being E-ball champions. We started off strong, going undefeated through our non-league games. This was the first time LHS had done this in over 30 years. The team's morale was high, and expectations were even higher for the rest of the season. Unfortunately, we would go 2-2 in league games, falling short of our league championship goals. With a record of 8-2, we qualified for the NCS playoffs as the 6th seed, having to go play a very tough game on the road against Rancho Cotati. We would unfortunately lose this game, and it would be the last game of my high school football career. When I look back at my experience playing high school football, I am met with a great deal of satisfaction. My senior season was nothing short of amazing. We won lots of games, I was a captain of a varsity sports team for the first time, and I rounded out the year with all league honors and a defensive MVP award from my coaches. The large amount of success I found over the 4 years brought a great deal of confidence and joy. However, I don't believe it allowed me to experience the feeling of loss and what growth comes from it. If anyone were to ask me over the last 4 years which sport I liked better between football and wrestling, my answer was always football. But wrestling has easily been much more influential on the person I am today. There's a saying I'm sure some of you have heard that goes, work to get 1% better every day. This saying is what comes to mind when I think about my high school wrestling career. I started wrestling in the 8th grade and found my initial success mainly because of natural athletic ability and strength. I didn't possess much technique or have any complex knowledge of the sport whatsoever. My dad was a successful wrestler at Livermore High, and I began to look up to his success and aim to replicate it once I reached high school. Freshman year, wrestling season came around, and I was immediately met with a massive culture shock. High school wrestling is nothing like middle school wrestling. Practices are hard, like really hard. I was also met with a new challenge of managing weight, which I believe has shown me how to stay disciplined and possess a great amount of self-control. I started out wrestling at the JV level, where I won my first 2 tournaments. The coaching staff pushed me to move up to the varsity level, and I was once again met with a massive culture shock. Varsity wrestling is nothing like JV wrestling. Up to this point, I had only ever lost 1 wrestling match ever. This did not last long, as I would go 0-2 in my first varsity wrestling tournament. My goal moving forward was to earn my varsity letter by the end of the season. This meant that I would either have to win 5 matches or place at a varsity tournament. Upon first hearing this, I'm sure it probably doesn't sound like too daunting a task, but once you're actually met with facing this task head on, it's a much different story. I had to mentally prepare myself as a 15-year-old boy to go out and get into a fight with an 18-year-old man. In the end, I was able to do it. I finished the season with a record of 10-16, and I even qualified for the NCS tournament, being the only freshman at 160 pounds to do so. Looking back on this, it has helped me to prove to myself that I can overcome odds and persevere through difficult situations. I would go 2-2 at the NCS tournament this year, which gave me confidence but also pushed me to want to win more. Sophomore year was unfortunately shrunken down due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This year would prove to be quite challenging. We had a super short 6-week season with no e-ball, NCS, or official state tournament. There were no additional tournaments either, meaning that all of our matches would have to come from dual meets. This season it was very difficult to stay motivated, and it felt like I had put in so much hard work for no payoff at the end. It was during this season where I began to entertain the idea of quitting the team. If it weren't for my dad, my best friend Hunter, and my best friend Hunter, I might have followed through with that decision. Despite the difficulties, I pushed through to a winning record of 5-3, but this season did leave a sour taste in my mouth. I felt as though the hard work I had put in should have been producing a better result. This is the point at which I realized I had to push myself harder than I had been before. In the summer, I committed myself to some off-season work in preparation for a big junior season. Before my junior season, I was met with another challenge that would prove to be very difficult. My friend Hunter sadly lost his life in a car accident just 1 week into our junior year. This was immediately met with a lot of confusion, grief, and sadness as I tried to adjust to a new life without him. Once wrestling season came around, it became much harder. The constant reminder of him being gone made it difficult to stay focused and grind the way I knew I needed to. Here was once again where I contemplated quitting the team. With help from coaches, teammates, and friends, I was able to make the decision I knew he would want me to make, and there was no longer a doubt in my mind that I wanted to wrestle and do it to my best ability. During this season, I was able to learn more from my coaches and more experienced teammates. This propelled me to a higher level of competition where I was able to make the podium at all of our regular season tournaments. When it came time for the postseason, I walked in with good confidence. I unfortunately would lose a close match in the e-ball semifinals, but battled back to win another close match for third. And this would qualify me for the NCS tournament, where I walked in unseeded with a tough road ahead. I would get an unlucky draw, having to wrestle the number 5 seed, where I lost a close match. I would go on to win 2 matches in consolation before losing my second match of the tournament, ending my season without an NCS medal for the second time. My record from the year was 30 wins and 11 losses, but the only match I could focus on was my last match. All I can remember from after this match was looking up at the gym ceilings and then looking at my dad, feeling disappointed in myself for letting my season end that way. Going into my senior year, I knew this was the last shot I had at making a mark on our wrestling program at LHS. Preseason rankings had me in the top 40 in the state at 182 pounds, and I was ready to prove that to both myself and the rest of the field. The only issue was that I weighed 220 pounds coming out of football season. Over the next month, I wrestled matches in the 220-pound and 195-pound weight classes while dieting and cutting weight to get down to a more desirable class. From this, I learned the value of discipline and working hard for something and earning the opportunity to compete in my desired weight class. I experienced a good amount of success this season, winning most of my matches and placing at all but one regular season tournament. This success pushed me to another NCS qualifying bid, where I walked in as the number 6 seed. On the way to the medal rounds, I beat the number 5 seed wrestler and punched my ticket into the match for 5th place. I would go on to win this match, finally making the NCS podium and reaching my goal. It was a bittersweet moment, as I was filled with joy from getting the big win while also knowing I had just wrestled my last ever high school wrestling match. This season I experienced more success than I had ever had, winning 35 matches, but what I believe was more important were my 12 losses. These losses, some tougher than others, inspired me to get 1% better every time I stepped into the wrestling room. I'm looking forward to applying this to whatever the future holds for me, and I'm thankful for the lessons both football and wrestling have taught me. Thank you.